All right. Good evening, everyone. Oh, we are here to talk some medicine in an absolutely not legally binding way tonight. We got a special guest. We got all our scenes back. Ish, Wes, punch it. Okay, hello everyone. Happy Monday night. Welcome to the Living Force. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Eilerson, and joining me tonight on this marvelous dive into Star Wars medicine are aptly the doctors. First, we have Dr. Corey Helton. Hey, man.
Oh man, I have a pulse still. That's good.
Oh, excellent. That's good. We had a little tech difficulty beforehand, but you managed it like a champ.
I did. I fixed everything.
I'm proud of you.
Kind of.
But I'm not nearly as proud as I am of Dr. Charles Hankel. Hi.
Hello there. I somehow managed to keep my cool through all of that, so I'm pretty proud of myself for that. Pretty much carried the tech difficulties of the show, and I'm ready.
Are
Let's
you
do
ever
this.
not cool? I feel like you just radiate cool.
Yes, I am Lando.
How can you even
There it
feel
is.
your legs given that you carry the entire weight of this entire show?
Good question for me. Also, Wes Jenkins is here.
What's up, guys? I've been having the time of my life seeing Corey pull his hair out and seeing his wife sit next to him and not make a sound. Apparently, this is normal in the household of the Heltons.
Well, there is hell 10 to pay if there are tech difficulties. Also, Corey and I are wearing the same shirt for all you video folks. Just a nice little Easter egg there.
Yours looks better than mine, like a lot better.
Yeah.
It's because I'm wearing it.
What's up with
Also,
that?
Emma Park is here. Special guest, Emma.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, Emma is finally here on the show. You may know Emma from a lot of our video content. She does amazing guides. She does amazing reviews. She's in the Discord. She's on the Twitter. She plays Youtini game nights. She has the Youtini sweatshirt on. Emma, you do all kinds of stuff. And you got a brilliantly new lit bookshelf behind you tonight.
Yes, I love it. We just put it up this weekend. Shout out to my dad for helping me. I love it. It's like so cozy. And I also found out that I have a lot of Funkos and a lot of just Star Wars stuff in general. So that was fun.
As you need, as everyone needs. I'm so glad about it. Speaking of Funkos, another Funko got announced today on the StarWars.com for Mando Monday because everyone, episode 2 of season 2 of The Mandalorian got released. Again, our Patreon show, Bounty Hunt, will be up tomorrow, I believe. We do that weekly recap show, just as a reminder. But guys, I want to go around the horn at the beginning of tonight's show and just say, how'd you like this second episode? Briefly. No spoilers, everyone. Don't worry. Emma, you're our guest. What'd you think?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I don't think it'll go down as anyone's favorite episode of Mando, but it was fun nonetheless.
Yeah.
That's a solid episode, right, guys?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I mean, we had a really good discussion on Bounty Hunt all about this. So if you're a Patreon or a patron of the Patreon, I can never do that.
It is ridiculous how close those words are.
It's
rude,
pretty
frankly.
obnoxious. I wonder what word they created first. Was it patron? Probably patron.
Yeah,
Then
probably
they were like
patrons.
Patreon. I don't know. I feel like they could have done better. Anyway, I liked it. It was a good episode.
Yeah, I agree. Very solid. I liked it a lot more after our discussion, honestly. So if you're one of those folks that maybe didn't love it as much, like me, talk with some friends about it for a bit and realize how fun it really is. Wes Charles, that's something a full person's name, but that's two men. Any distinct thoughts about the second episode of Mando, or any thoughts going forward in the season?
Well, I think it's going to set up some big things going forward in the next chapters we're going to see. So I don't think it's a throwaway episode or a filler episode of any sort, but I think we're going to come back to this episode and be like, remember when they showed us this part? We don't know which part yet, but I think it's going to be something that sets up for the future.
Yeah, who'd have thunk that Baby Yoda would really eat an egg every episode from then on? Like 3 seasons.
Oh my
Amazing.
gosh.
Please no.
I also want to take a second to say hi to everyone in the chat that's hanging out with us tonight. I see some familiar names. We got Heather, Meg, Andrew. Who else? We got Stephanie Mack is coming here. Oh my God, I just got the email that my Xbox Series X shipped. Anyway, Joxy's here. Sorry, I got very excited. Spice Den is here. Hi, everybody. I love you all.
I really want to ask Heather
today.
what a shark coochie board is. I'm just very concerned about that object. I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, it's like a plate with meat and cheese that you get only near the oceans. That's the shark part of it.
Okay.
They get better, please. I promise. And if you want better jokes, maybe become a patron. Speaking of Patreon, Corey, I want to throw this to you because we did not get to celebrate a patron of the week last week as we were not live. But we're making up for that this week, are we not?
Yes, we are absolutely making up for that. Now, if you've not heard of our Patreon, it is jam-packed with a ton of extra content. We have behind-the-scenes look, exclusive merch, and all kinds of cool stuff. So if you haven't seen that already, head over to patreon.com/Youtini. We do have a couple new patrons this week. Eric, I'm not sure if I heard you shout that out at the beginning of the show. Who are our new patrons this week, Eric?
I don't think... Well, we had patrons last week, but I don't know if we had any new ones this week.
Do we not have any new ones this week? All right, maybe I didn't update the outline properly then. But we do have a patron of the week, which I'm excited to reveal. So our patron of the week this week is Alex Colster. So I'm going to throw that, Wes, you can throw that video up and we will check it out.
Hey, Youtini. My name is Alex Colster, and I am from Kansas City, Missouri. I am honored to be the patron of the week this week, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I love Star Wars. I started as a Star Wars fan by watching the VHS tapes of the original trilogy, collecting the Power of the Force action figures, and playing the video games on Nintendo 64, specifically Rogue Squadron. It was one of my favorites on Nintendo 64. My favorite Legends novel is Shadows of the Empire. This was an action-packed, fun book, and I loved how they tied it into other forms of media, like the original score, the comics, the video games, the toys that came out with it. And I just remember that being really fun and immersive when all of that was released in the 90s. My favorite canon novel is Thrawn by Timothy Zahn. Surprisingly, this was my first exposure to Thrawn in novels. I did not read the Thrawn trilogy. I've not read it yet. But I've read all of the canon Thrawn material, and I'm probably going to dive into the Thrawn trilogy soon. My favorite Star Wars film would have to be The Last Jedi. I distinctly remember watching this in theaters and just being on the edge of my seat, especially in the third act of the film. And I think it's a beautifully shot film, and I think it's beautifully written. So it's probably one of the Star Wars films that I've rewatched the most over the past couple of years. I joined Patreon, I joined the Youtini community about a year ago or so when I started listening to the podcast, and I was looking for something. I was looking for a podcast that specifically talked about the novels and did roundtables and that sort of thing. So this was really the perfect fit, and that kind of led to finding the website and then getting involved on Patreon. And I have zero regrets. I've loved every minute of it. I know I don't post much on the Discord, but I love just being part of that community and seeing what everyone's talking about. I pop into the assembly chat sometimes, even though I have no idea what's going on half the time, but that's okay. It's still a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to the upcoming Alphabet Squadron sequel. I read the first 2 books this summer, and I'm totally hooked. I love the characters. I love the writing. So I would say that the sequel to the third book in that trilogy is what I'm really looking forward to this upcoming year. And finally, if you want to find me on social media, my Twitter handle is @AlexKolster. That's AlexKolster. And I also have that same handle on Instagram. So this has been fun. I'm not able to watch the show live tonight, but can't wait to catch up and watch the show later. Hope you all have a great show. And as always, may the Force be with you.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. That was super fun. I love hearing from folks that stumble on our community and find some value in it. So thanks a lot, Alex.
Yeah, that means a lot. And Alex, it has been around here for a while, and I've always loved seeing his name pop up everywhere. And it really kind of, is emblematic of what I love so much about the community is that whether you post a lot, whether you post a little, whether you've read a lot, whether you've read a little, we just love having you here. And I mean, Alex, I want to say I'm the same way as you with Thrawn. I think I've said it before. The first Thrawn novel, canon novel by Zahn, was my first Thrawn experience. So we are united in that. And I'm excited to hear your thoughts about the Legends trilogy, as I'm sure Jared and Freddie are as well when you get to that.
And let's be clear, nobody knows what's going on in assembly chat in our Discord. Literally nobody.
That is absolutely true.
That is so true.
For sure.
All right. So speaking of other cool things we have going on, we haven't had one of these in a while, but Corey, we have a pretty epic merch update to drop.
Yes, we absolutely do have a big update to drop. So Jose has been incredibly busy on the team. Jose, I know you're watching lives. You're going to get to see the kind of reveal of everything happening here. Been really inspired by some really cool pieces of artwork. So Wes, why don't you go ahead and throw up the... All right.
Yo.
Man, quick on the
my
trigger there,
God.
Wes. That was awesome. Yeah, so Jose's been crazy busy. Now you can throw up the merch reveal, Wes.
That's what I thought it was. Sorry about that. I thought we were just putting up pictures of the damn T-shirts and stuff that we were selling. No, there's a video behind it, and I'm sorry, Jose. I didn't. I succumbed to your expertise.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, so Jose has been super, super busy putting together this incredible line of Youtini merch that we're super excited about. This was originally sort of just a single piece based on the Handmaiden. That the sweatshirt you see right there was the original piece, and we kind of talked about it a little bit, and he's like, why don't we do some stuff from some other big Star Wars media as well as some mask, right? So we have the mask coming out too, as well as a bunch of inspired pieces. So this is the Empire Strikes Back from a certain point of view sweatshirt and t-shirt. We also have the Bounty Hunter, kind of inspired by Boba Fett, obviously. I really like that yellow color scheme. And then this is probably my favorite, I think, is the Handmaiden.
I love this one so much.
Absolutely
So
going to have to get the sweatshirt. And then lastly, we have the original armor from Mandalorian, which is pretty clever. So super excited about all the new merch coming out. And Eric, don't we have a code, a discount for the first couple of weeks?
Yes, we do. In honor of From a Certain Point of View coming out, the code for this month, if you guys want to get 15% off absolutely anything, is POV 15. That's POV for Point of View 15. And that'll go through the end of November if you want to get 15% off. We're celebrating the book release. We cannot wait. As Laugh It Up Fuzzball says in the chat, it is just in time for Christmas.
That's right.
So if any gifts you want to get, these are going to be super comfy. They're going to be super cool. And honestly, this is just a way for us to brag about Jose and how incredible incredible job you've done designing all this. You're so much more talented than us. All right. Moving on, everyone. We have a new little segment we're going to do right now, which is called the Star Wars Weekly Roundup. Yes, everyone, this is going to be a new little clip show we're going to do. We always talk about some book news at this point in the show, but we're going to clip it for the YouTubes, and we're going to see how it goes. I think I've already done a bang-up job by over-explaining it, so I'm going to go on. In this week's Star Wars Weekly Roundup, I have a little mini book review to give y'all. You may see to my left here, I have the Galaxy's Edge edition of Star Wars Myths and Fables. For full transparency, the folks at Disney Lucasfilm, Lissa Hurwitz, shout out, were kind enough to send me a copy of this because I loved the first Myths and Fables so much. It was one of our favorite surprises 2 years ago now, I think. And this new edition is freaking incredible. It's on Shop Disney right now. It'll be in Galaxy's Edge soon. And I just want to show it off to you guys. It is leather bound. It is freaking gorgeous.
That is sexy.
is raised. The side of it is like all those like leather strips or ribbons rather. They're kind of like book ribbons that kind of hold it together. So if you're gonna display it, maybe in the front instead of on your shelf like this. And I don't know if you guys have seen this online, but the pages are kind of like distressed in a way.
Cool.
Like they feel
That's
like
nice.
they've been like
Gorgeous.
you found this thing in an old attic is what it feels like.
What does it
and
smell like?
It smells like knowledge, wisdom, and and loss a little bit. But I wanted to say this book, it does include all those tales from the original Myths and Fables, including 6 additional stories.
Wow.
I have read the 6 additional ones. They're great. I mean, if you've honestly this year, I've kind of needed George Mann's storytelling. You know,
Yeah,
it's very
absolutely.
calming. It feels great. And this past week, I found myself during all the election stuff, just going to bed reading these stories and feeling a sense of calm and serenity, even with some of the darker ones. And it's got a heavier price tag online. It's $45 because of all the additional, the paper textures, all the leather bound stuff. And I will say for my money, it is absolutely worth it. This thing is a beautiful piece to put on a shelf facing out. Again, the cover is, you can see how the light's hitting it and reflecting it.
Yeah.
It's a really, really beautiful
It's super
addition to
clean.
anyone's collection.
It's super clean. Where can we pick it up at, Eric?
Shop Disney online right now. You can go get it. It's going in waves. I'm not sure if it's available at the moment, but they do kind of seem to be putting out little by little. And as Galaxy's Edge and the pandemic hopes to kind of recede away from time to time, it will eventually be available at the Galaxy's Edge Park over at Disney in California and Florida. So highly recommend. George, 6 stories here are just as beautiful as the other ones. I gotta say, some of them are even a little better, which I didn't think was possible. So you heard us on Roundtable say we want more George Mann stories.
Yes.
We got them. Thank you, Disney Lucasfilm.
George Mann is an incredible person, and he's been on our show a couple times. We've really enjoyed getting to know him a little bit, and I'm super happy to get any more George Mann that we can possibly get. So I think I don't normally buy the collector's editions, but I think that one looks like I might have to get it. That one is super slick.
Yeah, it's and Spice Den over in our chat said for those interested, it is back in stock right now.
Nice.
And
Ooh,
again,
that's good
full
to know.
transparency. Yeah, full transparency. Disney did send me this, but we do not have an affiliate for this. Any purchases, we don't get a cut like our normal Amazon thrift books kind of stuff from the website. This is just because we want you to enjoy a cool new book. So highly recommend it, and it's a great gift. Honestly,
Ooh,
if you want
that's a
someone that
great
loves Star Wars
idea.
books, great holiday gift right there.
Mhm.
Another thing of book news for this Star Wars Weekly Roundup. Tomorrow, we have this guy right next to me. From a certain point of view, The Empire Strikes Back is officially out tomorrow. So if you are listening to this on the Patreon feed or the audio feed, it is already out, which means that our written review that I was lucky enough to write is up on the site. And a video review done by our very own Nathan will be up on the Youtini YouTube channel either on Tuesday or on Wednesday. Short review, no spoilers. I really loved it. I think it's even better than From a Certain Point of View. The first one, it has more diverse voices and characters than any other piece of Star Wars media. And if you want to head over to youtini.com now, there's articles up by our very own Meg Dowell about the excerpts that have been released, featuring Boba Fett, L3, and more. And of course, the audiobook is up by a stellar cast of narrators over on Audible. You can go to youtini.com/audible, get a free credit, and pick it up. And finally, to round up this little book news thing, I want to remind you all about the books that are coming out soon. January is less than 2 months away, everyone.
Wow.
Which means we are less than 2 months away from the High Republic.
High Republic.
Yes.
That's right. January 5th, Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule. January 5th, A Test of Courage by Justina Ireland. And February 2nd, Into the Dark by Claudia Gray. Head over to the new releases page on Youtini. Get those pre-orders in. I cannot freaking wait to share these all with you. And that is this week's Star Wars Weekly Roundup. I feel good about that. I think that went well.
Yeah.
What do you feel, okay?
Good job, Eric.
Beautiful.
Oh, good. Whew. Whew. It'll be better, I promise. At this point, we would usually go into book reviews, but we have a guest, and we have already spent 20 minutes talking about other Star Wars things. So, guys, I would love to talk some Star Wars medicine. How do you feel about that?
I have mixed feelings, if I'm being honest.
All right, so speaking of that, before we do it officially, I want to give Charles and Corey, who are medical doctors, a second to give a full disclaimer. We are going to be talking about medicine in Star Wars. However, this is an entertainment show, We are not giving official medical advice. Charles, Corey, is there any other legalese you need to say before we go further in this discussion?
Not really, other than like we're really just going to be spewing facts, so hopefully there won't be any real medical advice. But there's no doctor-patient relationship. If you go and do something that we say, you're doing it at your own risk. Obviously, like we are physicians, but we're also residents who are like still in training, right? So that's probably the biggest point.
Don't go to your doctor and have him tell you something and be like, actually on this podcast I listened to, they said this other thing. Don't do that.
Yeah,
guys, if a patient said that to you, would you just smack him right in the face?
No, I would
Like,
probably
well,
ask
this
him
podcast.
what podcast they're listening to, and I hope it's not mine.
All right, well, fair enough. Emma, I want to throw this to you to start this talk because when we decided first we wanted to have you on the show. We've loved having you as part of a team, and we've loved your video stuff. We wanted to get to talk to you, and you came up with this idea because you are currently studying bio, correct?
That is correct. Yeah. I know that you guys have been kind of throwing around the idea of doing a medicine in Star Wars episode just because, I mean, half of you guys are doctors. And I was really looking forward to it. And I figured, now would be a really good time to do it since I know a little bit about the biology side of things. I'm still in college studying that. And I thought it'd be a lot of fun to talk about.
Absolutely. So you were awesome enough to put up a document of research, which is already way more than we do on anything but a round table, right, Charles? I love you, buddy. You any of us. But you put up a couple different cool little ideas here about medicine. And in the chat, if you guys have topics that pop out to you during this conversation, throw some questions down, throw some comments down. We're just gonna have a little talk about what is medicine like in Star Wars? Because sometimes it seems invincible. Sometimes it seems like you can't fix literally anything.
That's right. That's right. And so we had planned to have Emma on the show originally already. I wanted to have Emma on the show because she's one of our video team people. We want to get all those folks into the show at some point. And I tasked her with essentially doing some research to kind of dig into the Star Wars books, dig into both canon and legends, to pull out things that are like recurring themes, like back to Darth Vader's armor, stuff like that. Basically anything that's medically related at all. We're not going to be talking about specific books necessarily. Like I know there's the what's it called, the MedStar
duology.
The MedStar duology, which is not as medical as people seem to think it is, but that's really the only sort of medical themed stuff in Star Wars, I think. So basically, we just picked a bunch of themes, and they're going to have just sort of an intellectual sort of discussion about it, right?
Yeah, Emma will be scholarly, and we'll be like, yeah. So to start off, Emma, can you take us through your first point you put up on here was a substance that we're all pretty familiar with.
Yeah, so obviously, I think if you've watched any Star Wars movie, Bacta is something that you probably know about. We see Luke floating in it. In Rogue One,
Jedi
we see
diaper.
Darth Vader. Oh, Jedi diaper, yeah, sure. The little breathing tube.
Diaper.
Yeah, Jedi diaper. There you go.
Because he was in a motorcycle accident. I mean, Wampa attack.
So essentially, it's a thick fluid made of different bacteria, which I didn't know about. Thank you, Wikipedia.
Oh.
Yeah, I know, right?
I didn't know
it's made
that.
of like a couple types of bacteria, and it heals like all sorts of wounds. It's crazy.
Yeah,
calling it Bacta for bacteria is like calling him Greedo because he's greedy. Like George Lucas never changed. I love you.
That's right. And now that we're talking about Bacta, this reminds me actually. I think there are a couple more substances in Star Wars that are medical, have like a medical grade, kind of like Bacta does in the old Star Wars: The Old Republic games, or Knights of the Old Republic, the KOTOR games. Right? You go to what's that? Manon, the planet Manon, I think, and there's Kolto, which is basically Old Republic version of Bacta, I guess. But there's a bunch of these things, and they're always just kind of vaguely talked about as being like bacteria, right, or something else of that nature.
Yeah. So for your bio, so we'll start with the bio angle. Then I want to hit the practical medicine part of it. Emma, as far as what you've learned about bacteria, as far as just straight up biology goes, is this remotely conceivable? To have just found a bacteria that can just go into, bullet wounds and be like, oh, yep, got it.
Not really. I mean, obviously we have good bacteria in our gut, but most bacteria in large amounts, like what's in Bacta, are not good for you. So I don't think that this would be possible even with like genetic engineering or anything like that in our world.
All right, doctors, do you concur?
Yeah.
Yes.
Charles, I don't really know. We don't really have a good format here. Like, I don't really know how we're gonna kind of bounce this back and forth. I guess we can just spit out ideas here a little bit. I think probably the closest thing we have to something like Bacta, which at a fundamental level is essentially just like it's a substance that has ultra healing powers, right? And I
Liquid
think,
Band-Aid.
Yes, liquid Band-Aid. Wes has been waiting to yell that for like 10 minutes. I think the closest thing we have this like as a philosophical level is probably stem cell research. I would say like stem cells are like the most fundamental cells. Like every cell was originally a stem cell at some point, essentially, is a way to think about it, right? It's like the genetic code before it's been truly unlocked to tell you what it's going to be. Like everybody,
Before you buy the DLC to be alive, your stem cells.
Yes, exactly.
Just the basic code.
Exactly. And if you've ever studied embryology, it's absolutely fascinating to consider that like every living, breathing person like was originally a single cell organism is pretty freaking mind blowing, right? Like, so like we're only just now getting into stem cell research. There's a lot of really cool stuff in regards to like skin grafts involving stem cells that are pretty interesting. We don't really know much. For one,
So
it's a little controversial to even to work on stem cells too.
Yeah. I feel like that'd be something cool though, like having future stem cell patches, or just now thinking that Luke was just in a vat of stem cells that were like unlocking his genetic code as he was, drifting in the mist. Charles, what were you gonna say? I interrupted you very rudely.
I was just gonna say I was gonna take this in a very different direction. Just thinking about this right now, if you look at specifically what Bacta is, it's a mixture of bacteria, right? And one therapy does come to mind, and that is fecal transplants for people that have irritable bowel syndrome. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You take feces, that's poop, from a healthy person that does not have irritable bowel syndrome, and you literally do put it in a person who has IBS into their GI tract, into their colon, and there's good evidence that shows that can actually help to resolve people's irritable bowels. So really, that's liquid bacteria. That is the closest thing we've got to Bacta.
Yeah, and Emma brought up she brought the gut bacteria up. So
yeah,
I gotta say, Charles, it sounds like you're full of shit. All right, that's about what I got on that one, ladies and gentlemen.
Rim shot, please, Matt.
So just for the record, you can get paid for your poop, guys. If you didn't already know that, like,
what?
Yeah, so you can donate blood, you can donate plasma, and you can go to like a blood transfusion center and get paid like $50 to $200 to donate plasma. You can donate stool, and it's like a lot of money, like upwards of $500 even, because you have to go through like a really stringent process, and like the specimen collection is obviously highly involved, right? So they have to test you for all these diseases, all this crazy stuff, and yeah.
Wes, don't roll in somewhere with a Ziploc bag on Wednesday, okay?
And
It
to
is
think,
not that
Charles, I
simple.
just been getting rid of this stuff every day, sometimes twice. Can you believe it?
Oh man, that's hilarious.
Wow. Okay, that's the stuff that those are the lost episodes of Clone Wars that we missed out on.
Right.
Or when Luminara and them were.
Emma, where does the Bacta come from? Did you stumble on that anywhere when you were reading about this?
It wasn't very clear. I saw like it came from some plants. It wasn't 100% clear.
Yeah. Is it poop? Can you donate your poop? Is it Star Wars?
I think I can
donation?
definitely rule out that it's not poop.
I think
That we know
honestly,
of.
we always hear about trade in Star Wars, right? Like there's planets that have all these resources, and like they're always fighting over the planets that make Tabana gas. We hear about that all the time. But I feel like we don't. There should be a planet that like has the bacteria for Bacta. Like I think that would be.
It's like the
Bacta
Rogue
is a-
Squadron series, right?
Oh, yeah, the Bacta War. Right. Legends.
Where's Jared at?
Yeah.
Jared, help! Yeah,
Jared, we
for
said
real.
it.
But to answer the question, is there a medical equivalent on Earth? Absolutely not. Like particularly the fact that like we see it used in so many different formats, right? They can inject it. They can you can swim in it. Like you can be submerged in it. You can
Bacta. I was like, I thought we were back to poop again. And I was like, whoa. Hold on.
Oh my god.
That took a turn.
Yes. And
Yeah,
then
back to
even in
Dustin, like the cure-all.
in the Mandalorian, you see IG-11 sprays him with it, which is
Mhm.
weird. I don't know if we've ever seen that before. That's pretty unique.
Yeah, back to
Yeah,
his, like,
I think
hair
the only
product.
thing
You
I
got
can think
spray,
of-
gel.
Well,
I might cut you off.
Yeah, the only thing I can really think of like similar to the spray is I don't know if you guys remember in Battlefront 2015 when you like threw the Bacta grenade on the ground and like all your teammates could get healed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot
remember
about that. So it's a grenade format. Oh, yeah, certainly you don't have any medicine you can throw into a grenade.
Yet, Corey.
Yet, yes.
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
yeah.
Just go into like the ICU during COVID when she has the vaccine, just throw a couple grenades in there. All right, everybody, we'll see you later. We did it.
Yep.
Another thing I want to talk about now, the second thing you put on this list, Emma, is one of my favorite medical marvels of Star Wars, which is Darth Vader's armor, right? It starts out in the original trilogy as, okay, he breathes a little loud and we don't know too much about it. And then episode 3 comes around, it's like, oh no, that's legs. It's an arm. He can't even breathe. He pees in the suit, according to Luceno. How does he actually eat? Like, it becomes this ridiculous medical apparatus. So talk to us a little bit about how you came to this, to the armor in your research to start out.
Yeah, I've always been interested by prosthetics in Star Wars, like with
Mhm.
Luke's hand in Empire. That always like really interested me. And when you think of prosthetics in Star Wars, no one is a better example than Darth Vader because literally all 4 of his limbs are prosthetics.
Mhm.
So his suit, I found out, actually helps him to do literally everything, like eating, breathing, speaking, and it even has like these probes in his helmet that attach to his brain that help him operate his limbs.
Wow.
Which is, I feel like we're getting, I guess now would be the Charles and Corey question. Like I feel like we've seen YouTube videos and stuff lately of the advances of prosthesis, especially in the last 5 years. I feel like that's become something that, like, you see the kids that get like the Iron Man colored hands and stuff, and now like people are able to like individually manipulate fingers and do all these amazing things with prosthesis technology.
Yeah,
I think it's really cool.
That's certainly absolutely true. You know, I think Emma's got a pretty significant list here. I think Darth Vader's armor is probably one of the closest to real medicine that we actually have, funny enough. Like, it seems so
That's awesome.
unrealistic, but like, I really don't know that we are too terribly far away from this type of technology because we do have incredible research that's in regards to limbs, right? Like, has there ever been a more is there a more common trope in superheroes than like somebody losing a limb and trying to grow it back? That's a Spider-Man thing. It's a Batman thing. It's in everything, right? So, and we do have a lot of really cool stuff these days in regards to like losing limbs. And the other thing that kind of stands out as being maybe realistic a little bit is the respirator, right? Like, we don't really know the details of exactly what the purpose of that is, but we do have portable oxygen. Now those things are very, very small, like almost to the point that they're concealable, to the point that if you didn't notice the tubes on somebody's face, that you wouldn't even see the nasal cannula.
Wow.
but-
I love it when you say cannula.
I will say the thing that stands out to me about Darth Vader that is probably the most unrealistic is the amount of burn wounds that he would have had, right? And a burn, if you've ever seen any movies like medical stuff that involve like burn units or something like that, burn units in hospitals are almost like a surreal place. Like, it's like there's a level of like solemnness to the burn unit that's like pretty unforgivable. I spent a little bit of time in a burn unit in medical school, and like the wounds are very, very traumatic. There's a lot of death, a lot of people die. And when you have the amount of burns that Vader would have had, which is all over his body, it's really not the burns themselves that kill you. Just like when the nuclear bomb goes off, right? It's not, if you're not really close to the explosion, it's not that kills you, right? It's the aftermath of that kills you, right? You have this huge immune response. And that's ultimately what kills most folks that have these horrible burn wounds. In addition to like there's all these entry sites all over your body, like directly to your bloodstream for bacteria to get in, going back to bacteria, right? So infection is really the number one thing that kills you. Infection and immune response, the number one things that kill you after having major burns. So that's pretty unrealistic.
Yeah, do you think there's something to that then? Because I know the last few years we've really kind of gone with the theory, a little bit in the comics, especially that like Palpatine was manipulating Padme's life force to keep Vader alive. Do you think that this might honestly kind of push that evidence that way? Because if there was literally no way that Anakin could have survived, Vader at that point, my mistake. Please don't leave. That Vader could have survived with that amount of burns. Do you think it makes sense that Palpatine must have been sucking life force out of somewhere else because there's no way, even as strong as he was, that he could have survived that amount of burn damage?
Charles, did you take that one?
Well, they had Bacta, so who knows? It's already a wonder drug.
True.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna say yeah, because one, I like that theory. I think it makes sense when we look back at what happened to Padme and how she just, quote unquote, lost the will to live. And we talked about that on this show before. But yeah, the reality is, just to echo what Corey said, Vader was a goner. Like, if you just look at it from our galaxy's perspective, one, if you get 3 limbs cut off and it's not a lightsaber that instantly cauterizes everything, you're done. You're gonna bleed out.
Absolutely.
2, yeah, when it comes to the burns, I mean, these burn centers that Corey's talking about, I mean, this is like highly specialized medicine that people practice because it's that complicated. And there's actually like this rule of 9s that you can do, right, to figure out how much of a person's body is burnt. And we don't need that for Vader because it's 100%.
Right.
But the other thing I think is, Corey touched on the idea of it's not necessarily the severity of the burn, but also the extent of the burn. But the severity of the burns for Vader also would have been really bad. So we talk about these from, 1st degree, which basically means that it's just the very superficial part of the skin, all the way to 4th degree, which means it's actually like burning muscle, bone, all those underlying things. And I mean, Vader's legs that were directly touching the lava were at least 3rd degree, if not 4th degree. And then, his whole body followed. So, I mean, long story short, he's a goner.
I have never heard of a 4th degree burn before now. And I think that's because like all the medical shows on like Fox and CBS will like stop at 3rd.
That's right. I mean, most people don't survive it. I think the closest thing that we have to, at least right off the top of my head, the closest thing I can think of that would be similar to this was a case study I read. This is crazy, of a guy whose dog jumped into the hot springs in what's that in like Montana? What is it? The Old Yeller or whatever? Like, what's all that?
Yellowstone,
yeah. The hot springs at Yellowstone. The water is like insanely hot. It's like boiling level hot, right? And a guy's dog jumped into the water, and he jumped into the water to try to save his dog, and both of them died. Like, and it was incredibly traumatic. Like, awful story. Guy saved the dog, but I mean, like they did a medical case study on this guy's case, and like it was horrific. Like, I mean, your skin falls off. Like, it is absolutely awful, and like it's a incredibly painful way to die. Like the way that they talk about, people say that like a lot of burn victims, they burn all the nerve endings and stuff so you don't feel pain, is absolutely not true. Like, those people are in excruciating pain, and pain control is really a big priority because like the response to that, to your blood pressure and all that sort of thing, that can kill you also. So you don't want to be burned. Like, Vader would certainly, even so, if we're like 1,000 years into the future and medicine is immensely better than it is now, right? And Vader is somehow able to survive because our medicine is so incredible at that point, he would be in excruciating pain for the rest of his life. Absolutely excruciating pain for the rest of his life.
Which I think is backed up in the novels pretty decently, right?
It is.
Every comic and book where like Vader draws on the pain, like, I mean, like to a far bigger extent than like Kylo Ren in Force Awakens, where he's just hitting himself for the blood. I love that part. But Vader in the books is so clearly tortured, and there's definitely a feeling that Palpatine made sure that the suit wasn't able to completely give him pain relief. Like, it kept him alive, but they wanted to make sure that he had that pain to feed off of. So the dark side was even stronger within him. Yeah. And it's kind of like the Hulk, like what you guys are talking about reminds me of, like, in the Avengers, he says, "I'm always angry. That's my secret." Like, I think Vader, he always feels the burns every second of his entire life. That kind of like feeds his power the whole time. So when he loses that, power and pain at the end of Return of the Jedi, perhaps he's able to finally drift away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh God, burns are awful.
Yeah, you don't want to be burned.
No. Can we? No, if you don't mind, let's leave burning in flesh, muscle bone for a second. Sorry. To go to one of the most wonderful people in Star Wars, the ruler of the glorious planet of Alderaan, our Lord and Savior as well, Bria Organa. Because she had, if you haven't read the books, you may not know some of the cool medical stuff that she had. Emma, take it away, please.
Yeah, so this was something super interesting that I had kind of forgot about because it's been a while since I read Leia, Princess of Alderaan, which is a great book, by the way. Claudia Gray is amazing, of course. So Brea Organa has pulmonodes, and those in the book, they described she fell off of a cliff, I believe it was, and she had her lungs and her heart replaced by these pulmonodes. And I know that in our real life, we have, lung transplant or like a heart transplant. But these were kind of described as like these gold type of things that could be seen on her skin. And a lot of people that had pulmonodes would use Bacta to generate skin back over the pulmonodes, but she chose not to. And so I'm wondering, Corey and Charles, if, are lung and heart transplants as successful as her pulmonodes would be? And I know this is a very hypothetical question.
Charles, let you take this one first.
That's tough. I can't pretend to know like the numbers for how successful they are off the bat, but obviously highly very daunting procedure to have both of those things replaced. And there actually is kind of a relatively high demand right now, even for some of these lung transplants with COVID that's going on. I saw that several times when I was in my last ICU month. But basically, you have to be very healthy at baseline to survive that, and you have to have very good insurance to be able to afford that. But probably like what the actual pulmonodes were doing is they were kind of acting as the closest thing that we have in our world is something that's called ECMO, which stands for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. And it's kind of like this giant machine.
God, I love when you guys talk dirty. It's so great.
I know, it sounds ridiculous.
That's the next shirt, Jose.
This sounds sci-fi, but it's real. It's essentially a machine that serves the function of your heart and lungs if they need to be bypassed for any reason, or like if you're having them entirely transplanted. So all your blood goes out of your body into this machine. It oxygenates that blood like your lungs would do, and then it pumps that blood right back into your body so it can give nutrients and oxygen and all the things that all your cells need.
Isn't that what Keith Richards used to do once a year? Like I feel like I heard, like that's half a joke and half not. I feel like I heard that Keith Richards would like recycle his blood once a year because of all the drugs he did.
That sounds like
I saw
dialysis.
Charles roll his eyes right when you started asking that question.
Probably not, but maybe.
Okay, fair.
Yeah,
so that's probably the closest thing that we have, but nothing you could just walk around with, certainly.
No. And we're certainly making strides in regards to artificial organs, right? Like there's some big stuff in regards to like I think an artificial pancreas, which is super interesting. Artificial hearts we're very well on the way to like fully artificial hearts now. Like we're pretty close to that being like actually like mainstream, honestly. Like Charles said, this is incredibly advanced shit, like way over our heads. Like I went into I think the most complex surgery similar to this I've ever seen is I saw a multi-valve replacement surgery one time where they replaced a aortic and part of, I don't know if they replaced the mitral valve or if they did something else to the mitral valve, but it was like an 8-hour procedure, and there's a heart-lung machine involved where like they like take the artery that's going into your heart and connect it to a machine, so all your blood goes into a machine and then it's cycled and pumped with air. Like and pump with oxygenation, kind of like ECMO, and then it's filtered back into your heart, and it's like a machine that does the purpose of your heart temporarily while you're in surgery having your heart worked on. It's mind-blowingly complex, and there's a person that works in the operating suite that is their only job is managing the heart lung machine. Like that's literally all they do. They went to school to study this stuff. They're paid a fortune to do this, and like Charles said, you have to have incredibly good insurance to do this kind of stuff because it's incredibly expensive procedures. There's a movie about this, actually, about some guy that goes off the deep end. They made us watch it in medical school, Charles.
Okay, yeah, I want to ask about that because so I'm looking at the chat right now. First of all, hi to Cheryl and Adam who have joined us since we last said hi. Stephanie Mack says the David procedure. Does that sound
David
familiar?
procedure? That sounds familiar. I don't know what that is. Here, I'll look it up.
But
This is the name of the movie, maybe?
maybe something. I don't know. Let's wait for the chat log to come around. But
I did not have to watch this in med school.
For not a medical person, Emma and Wes, like back me up on this. This is insane.
It is.
I thought this was all so much farther away than I could have ever fathomed.
Oh,
like,
for sure.
What?
Yeah, yeah. The
For sure.
David
All of
David
it's crazy,
procedure
really.
is it's an aortic. It's a valve sparing aortic root replacement. So that's probably the procedure I was in. But I was a medical student and didn't know what the hell was happening all around me. If I'm being honest.
There you go.
Yeah,
There you go.
we're very close to this. Honestly, artificial lungs. We might actually see that in our lifetime, guys. Like for real. Like that's crazy to think about. But like we are really not that far away from this like sci-fi level cyberpunk like organ shit.
Yeah.
Like we're
Well,
really
and
not
also,
far
like, I
away.
feel-
things are
Go ahead, Charles.
things are moving so fast too. You have to keep in mind because the first person to person like heart transplant that happened was actually like around 1970, and I remember this because I studied abroad like in the area
1970.
where yes in 1970. No, I studied abroad in the area where the hospital was that they did that first transplant, and so in a matter of just since 1970 approximately where we are today. And so if you think about that, I mean, shoot guys, we're gonna have back to in a few years.
Yeah.
It's miraculous to think about, and especially like conjecture from someone on the outside of all of it, like with COVID happening and us not entirely knowing the long-term effects of everything. Like artificial lungs sound pretty damn good to me. I'm just having those on hand. And speaking of that in a virus way, Emma, the last big, or no, not the last, you kidding me? We have so many. The next, it was in the doc, I need to scroll up. The fourth thing you had to go was a particularly bad virus of its own. Segue.
Yes, that was a wonderful, wonderful segue. So,
Thank
speaking
you.
of viruses, the blue shadow virus, or as Dr. Vindy would say, the blue shadow virus.
Yes.
Yes, we all remember that guy. So obviously this was from the Clone Wars, and it was a virus that had gone extinct, but was brought back by a scientist underground on Naboo. And actually Padme and Ahsoka, I believe, ended up getting the virus. He put it in bombs and stuff, and he was planning on spreading it all across the galaxy. And it wasn't very clear what the symptoms were, but you could tell it had something to do with your respiratory system, just because your skin
Couldn't
turned
smell
kind
or
of
taste
blue.
anything.
Yeah. Had to go on a ventilator. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So essentially, it reminded me a lot of COVID, and I'm not gonna lie, this was the first thing I thought of when I was thinking of Star Wars and medicine, because it is so topical right now with viruses.
Yeah, so I guess that's the question of, Star Wars is such an advanced medical thing. Like Corey and Charles, like you guys were saying, with the stuff that Bria has and with the Bacta, like this is such a universe where almost anything can be cured, like anything can be fixed for the
Right.
most part. And then you get something like the blue shadow virus. Like, do you guys think, purely hypothetically, there will always be disease evolution to combat medical evolution?
I think so. Charles, like, I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on this. Like, I think the closest, that's a whole huge topic in and of itself, Eric. Like,
Yeah,
will there,
see, as I was saying it, I'm like, I don't like this if it's yes, because that's
what's
very
your
sad. But...
a really simple way to simplify that question, Eric, is will there ever be a cure to cancer? That's probably the easiest
sure.
way to answer that question. And the short answer is no, because the way cancer works is a genetically modified thing, unless we completely unlock everything in regards to DNA, which is probably not going to happen. Not unless we ascend to some like higher level thinking species, right? Like, I don't think we will ever cure cancer, unfortunately. I don't think that's ever going to happen. So I don't think we will ever be able to beat everything and live forever. I don't think that's going to happen. We can maximize
Charles, thoughts on
Yeah.
immortality?
I mean, the issue is that the more connected everything is in the world, the easier it is for these disease processes to crop up and to evolve and change to the point that we have to change how we treat them. Or a lot of times novel things, right? Like coronavirus pop up and we don't know how to treat them. So yeah, the world is certainly not going to get any less connected. So we're going to see this from time to time. It's pretty inevitable.
Yeah, and I think a good way to maybe talk about this question too is, Emma, you might be able to help us answer this a little bit. You've taken some introductory classes? Like, have you studied what a virus actually is, like the RNA process and all that stuff?
Yeah, I have a little bit in evolutionary biology, like how viruses evolve. I didn't go super in depth in it in that class, but it is very interesting. Like, for example, if you get like an illness that has to do with bacteria, for example, and you take antibiotics, the bacteria will get used to the antibiotics, and it's similar with a virus. That's why we have to get a new flu shot every year, because the virus evolves.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting question, I think, that you have to ask a lot that I don't think most people understand. Is Emma, you've probably been asked this in one of these introductory science classes, is a virus alive? Have you ever been asked that question before?
Yes, and I still don't know the answer, honestly.
Nobody knows the answer to it because
I saw that one episode of Jimmy Neutron where they look like the little guys with the D20s on their heads, and they look very lively.
So those are bacteriophages, and those are not viruses. But I know exactly what you're talking about.
So
It's a little
I ruined it.
it's a little D20 dice with legs and arms. That's exactly what it is, right? Those are bacteriophages, a little different. Still,
Damn you, Nickelodeon.
exactly. I think that's a common mistake, is people think that those are viruses, and really, a virus is. Charles, you can help me out with this, I'm sure. A virus is pretty much just a little bitty piece of genetic material that happens to have the tools to reproduce, or can hijack the tools that everybody else already has, right? So, is a virus alive? Well, you have to ask the question, what does it mean to be alive? Does it mean to reproduce your own genetic code and to create more copies, to be able to mutate? Because it has all of those features, right? But can it think? I don't know. You have to define what it means to think. So, it's really a fundamentally complex question, is a virus alive? Which is why viruses are so incredibly hard to fight, because it's not like bacteria, which are large, complex organisms, right? They have lots of different tools that you can attack them, right? You can get in there. This is metaphorical. Viruses don't actually have these parts, but you can kill a virus by fighting its heart or its lungs or its brain or its skin, right? Or bacteria. You can fight bacteria that way, but viruses don't really have all those things. It's like a millionth the size of a bacteria, right? So to fight a virus, you have to find, the flu virus, for example, you have to find a common strand of DNA, a common piece of the DNA that all the viruses have, and that's a very complex thing to actually do. And then you introduce the part of the antibody that attaches to that part of the virus, of the RNA and the DNA. You introduce that bit to the human body, so your human body recognizes the piece that it was identified to. So, when you have something like coronavirus or flu virus, which are fast mutating, constantly changing viruses, it's very, very challenged to find that common denominator that's in all the viruses, which is why the flu shot is only depending on the year, 30 to 70% accurate.
Yeah, which is also interesting. Speaking of how those viruses transmit and things like that, Spice Den, I want to call out in the chat here. We've got some excellent comments coming up from Stephanie, Laugh It Up, Adam, Cheryl, Spice Den, and John Dutch Vander all talking. And Spice Den made a good point that in Queen's Peril, when they were sick, they wore masks because they didn't want to stop the written pre-2020. Just a quick shout out there. But I think that's an interesting point to kind of the difference between the two, to bring it back to Star Wars wise, I feel like is very much based on what the disease needs to serve in terms of story. Do we want in the Blue Shadow virus arc, it needed to be something that could be spread quickly and it needs to last for a full episode arc. That being said, it was also cured within that episode arc.
Yeah.
So that was pretty fast acting medicine. But I find that interesting to see what's useful here. What do we want to slap back on and be a wound? What do we want to scar? What do you want to be respiratory? And, and as a story creator, I think that's really fascinating when you introduce sickness. Because that is something you can't hit with the lightsaber or shoot with the blaster.
Yeah. And you know what else is interesting about that episode is that they found, Anakin and Obi-Wan found the antidote to the virus on the planet of Iago, which is mentioned in the Phantom Menace. And so you kind of wonder if, story-wise, they introduced the virus so that we could see what Iago looked like, because that's where the antidote was. So you just kind of think about those things.
Well, I just think about the immortal words, Lego my Iago. Moving on to our next topic, which was inspired by our very own national anthem of doing them drugs. Corey's game night. Emma, what do we want to talk about with KOTOR?
Yeah, so KOTOR, I'm just going to do a quick roundup of all those drugs because Corey made it so famous. There's, all sorts of different types of drugs that Corey loved to inject in KOTOR. So there's basically three different types. There's a stimulants, which is injected, and they provide an increase in strength. And then there's a med pack, which I think, like in our world, would be similar to like a first aid kit. I think it's similar to Bacta in the Star Wars universe. And then there's an antidote kit, which is injected as well, and it heals exposure to any type of poison. So Charles and Corey, stimulants, med packs, antidote kits. What would you rather have?
Ooh.
Charles, you go first.
Okay, well, just a couple of quick points. I feel like because we have this joke about stims or stimulants, right? And we have stimulants in real life, but it's not really what the game is talking about. Like people use stimulant medications for things like ADHD, like Adderall, things of that nature. But if you're talking about like a medication that provides the actual things that stims do in here, like an increase in your strength, etc., you're basically talking about an artificial version of hormones that are in your body that get released by your adrenal glands for your whole fight or flight response, right? If you've heard of adrenaline, like most people have, you're talking about epinephrine, norepinephrine, all these things that get released in your body. So that's technically real, but you don't just shoot some up and then go fight somebody in an alleyway like Corey does in KOTOR. Yeah, I agree. Med packs, basically first aid kits. So it's like kind of like a Band-Aid. So I'm not going to take that into a fight. And the antidote kit, yeah, I mean, antidotes in real life are real, right? But very specific to whatever the poison is that you're trying to treat. So I think I would choose a stem. I think I would beef myself up with a stem and just go in headstrong.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask on that point before I want to hear Corey's answer, but do you guys think is it even remotely possible in this like brilliant 1,000-year from now medical future of having things that are that simplistic of like, here's the antidote, and it's like the antidote that if we've unlocked the genetic code, is there a way to have one thing that could essentially just, oh, all right, I inject it and then I'm cured from whatever. Like, is that even remotely feasible, or are all these bacteria and viruses so individualized that that's ridiculous? The antidote that if we've unlocked the genetic code, is there a way to have one thing that could essentially just, oh, all right, I inject it and then I'm cured from whatever? Like, is that even remotely feasible, or are all these bacteria and viruses so individualized that that's ridiculous?
It's not possible.
I don't think it's possible. Like, although I will say that if medicine has taught me anything, is that like a lot of really crazy shit is possible. So I don't know, maybe 1,000 years from now, like I don't know, if we had some like crazy mixture of like, I don't know, diseases are too specific is the problem. They're too specific. Like you have to, every tiny little disease process has got a very specific treatment regimen, right? I mean, like the closest generic thing that we have to just promote healing, I think, is probably something like maybe steroids, like dexamethasone, prednisolone, things like that. Like, so
steroids are the ultimate medicine, Dr. Corey Helton.
No, and the evidence is really iffy if they help COVID, so shut the hell up about that. So
Disclaimer from the beginning.
That's right. I'm with Charles, though. I think stimulant is probably the most realistic thing. I mean, the Nazis did, mass produce methamphetamine and cocaine, actually, for that matter, for their troops. It was one of the sort of tactics all around Blitzkrieg, is they would like all get super high on meth and then just like stay awake for like 4 days and just like fight, run, fight, run. That's how they invaded Europe, right? So we've seen that happen before.
Jeez.
What about adrenaline?
Adrenaline?
Yeah.
So
a shot of adrenaline right to the heart.
Adrenaline is basically just norepinephrine.
Oh my God.
That's a thing, right?
I hate that. No, this is a thing I need to say. In all
go
of
off,
the
Charles,
movies,
go off.
In all of the movies, someone like their heart stops, and then someone finds like epinephrine, and they end up sticking it like through their sternum. Like
I've seen Pulp Fiction.
In every movie, they stick it through like the thickest bone that you could possibly try to stick it through in your chest, and it bugs the crap out of me. But no, adrenaline is a real hormone and a real medication that we use. But really, I mean, those kind of medicines we use more so as like drips in the ICU to like keep your blood pressure up and stuff like that. It's not it's not quite as glamorous as you see in the movies.
That's like a medical school throw, right? Isn't adrenaline norepinephrine?
No, it's just epinephrine because
It's just
noradrenaline
epinephrine?
is norepinephrine.
Oh, that's right. I was gonna say, like, so stimulant medications used to treat ADHD, like Vyvanse, right? I took Vyvanse through medical school because I have ADHD, and I try not to take it now because it makes me flipping crazy. But I took it through medical school because we had to memorize or read 20,000 pages of text, and it was ridiculous. And that medication is essentially converted into norepinephrine in your bloodstream, right? So, and that has a stimulant effect. So a lot of the medicines we use to treat epinephrine with, or I'm sorry, treat ADHD with, are similar to epinephrine, right? So it's kind of like adrenaline. You certainly feel like hyped up when you take ADHD medication. So,
Are you sure you didn't take that before the podcast, Corey?
it may have just been meth, honestly.
All right, going off of Nazi math, Emma, bring us home with Bloodburn.
All right. So, Rebel Rising, one of my personal favorite books.
Underrated book.
Underrated for sure. Is introduced a disease that we hadn't seen before in Star Wars called bloodburn. And it was seen mostly in younger pilots when they flew. And this actually brings up something from the Mandalorian episode. I don't know if we want to talk about it or not. I hope someone knows where I'm going with this. But, you know, the pilot could die if they continue to fly with this disease. And it wasn't really seen in passengers. And so, you know, the cure, there was none, except for just staying out of space and, you know, improving diet and exercise. So my question to you guys is, you know, why don't you think that this affects the passengers too? And if we ever see like space travel with younger people, do we think maybe this could affect like the growth of young people?
Interesting. So if Charles went off about substernal injections, I'm going to go off about bloodburn because I also love the book Rebel Rising, and I hate this concept. I don't know why. This particular disease in Star Wars really pisses me off. Like, it just seems so not really thought out well. Like, it's very obvious that the author, who wrote Rebel Rising, by the way?
Beth Revis.
Beth Revis.
It's very obvious that Beth Revis has no medical background because this is so unrealistic. Like bloodburn, like it's all these vague symptoms, like dizziness. Like they paint it kind of like anemia, except in space, and like bloodburn is a terrible name. I'm sorry. I'm going off. I hate it. The closest thing we probably have to this is some form of anemia, I would guess. Like, why doesn't it affect passengers? I don't know. We do have diseases regarding space travel. I mean, Charles, you know anything about that?
About space diseases?
Yes.
No, we didn't cover those very often in my medical school training. I've not, to my knowledge, treated any astronauts in my lifetime. But there are things we could talk about. You mentioned like growth, Emma. So, I mean, you know, if you were always in like 0G, right? Like if you were always floating around, that would have an effect on like your bone density and stuff like that. So there are little things that we could talk about, but no, I don't know any space specific diseases other than being in open space is very bad.
Yeah, but I find it interesting. Adam brings up a good point in the chat too. I believe this is also in Bloodline, and I think
that's
like,
right.
Yeah, story-wise, I think it's fun now. Now, going from the no medical background perspective, which I always proudly like to bring to this show, I like the idea of the pilot disease purely because of like I think Star Wars pilots have a lot of like the burn hard, die young kind of feeling, especially like TIE pilots. So personifying that with an actual disease of like, well, you're gonna go in space more, but you might literally die from this thing is like, oh well, cool. I'm gonna like die young and I'm gonna like go Top Gun and go crazy. And the only cure being, you know, backing away and taking it easy, I think brings back to what we were talking about earlier with the reasons for bringing disease into Star Wars, which is kind of the topic I want to kind of round out our segment on. Is I want to ask you guys as a whole, to everybody in this discussion, what do you think is the best reason for bringing in disease? Like, I like the concepts we've talked about because they all do something different. Like the Blue Shadow virus was in there because Anakin couldn't kill it with a lightsaber, and he had to save his wife, which was a horrible thing. Vader's suit is a way of keeping him alive, but also kind of making sure that he's always in some sort of pain. Bloodburn is a way to make these hotshot pilots have to decide between the thing they love most, flying, and taking it easy and quitting essentially, but also saving their lives. So what do you guys think is maybe the best reason for bringing in medicine? Or do you think that in future Star Wars books, are there other ways that you guys would like to see medicine brought into Star Wars?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And
thank you.
I think maybe that's one of the reasons that the blood thing kind of bothered me so much is like it's too realistic, right? Like, and I don't like the idea that's painted in a way of like painted in a way that like all pilots can get this or will get this. And I think that's what it is about Star Wars that's kind of frightening is like I like escaping to that universe, and to having people die of chronic disease like sucks. Right? So it's too close to home.
Official stance for the living force.
Yes.
Chronic disease sucks.
It does.
Get on a t-shirt, Jose.
I agree.
Yeah, that's funny.
I think though, on the flip side of that coin, I have an appreciation for when fiction can make some of that stuff a little bit more understandable or accessible. So like, yeah, there's a lot of misinformation. Don't make it a one-to-one analogy between your Star Wars and your understanding of medicine in real life. And I think that episode has showed us that. But, you know, not shying away from the fact that there's a lot of bad things out there that can happen to you. And it's not necessarily your fault, but it presents a lot of challenges for a lot of different kinds of people out there. And just kind of heightening that awareness for all of us, I think, is pretty important.
Yeah, that's certainly true.
Yeah, and I also like it's interesting too, because we talk a lot about representation on these shows, right? In books and in media, Star Wars is getting so good about that with sexuality and race and gender identity and all these things. And I think it's also important for the disabled community or people that have chronic disease to also see themselves in Star Wars, like to see people that have prosthetics, to see that Brie Organa had transplants and wears them proudly, and like all these kind of things. You know, from a worldwide story perspective, the more medicine we can bring in, the more people that have to like deal with medicine in their daily lives can see themselves in Star Wars too. And I think having your hero be someone that also might have to get injections or might also have prosthetics is really freaking cool just on a society perspective.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. And like, I mean, you see prosthetics are frequently talked about as being from Star Wars, like in real life now. Like we talk about like getting a Star Wars arm and things like that.
Oh yeah, Mark Hamill, like all those kids that say like it's Luke, like I have a hand because it's like Luke, and it makes me cry on Twitter every goddamn time.
It's incredible, right? Like, so I mean, Star Wars is already like has that. So like the thing that it's done for amputees and stuff is incredible, right? I mean, like there is that close to home feeling of like you can be like Luke, right? And so I think it's cool. I think I would like to see more. I think medicine in Star Wars, like maybe less stuff like bloodburn, which is like chronic disease, like maybe less stuff like that. But like the blue shadow virus is cool. I mean, weaponizing viruses is not a new concept. Like transplants, like Vader suits, like all of that sci-fi like biotech stuff is really interesting, and we're really making a lot of incredible strides in regards to that in real life. So it's cool to see it in Star Wars.
I love it. Any last thoughts about Star Wars medicine before we're gonna end as we always do? We got some podcast updates. I want to give you guys to thank you for sticking around. We have a new person that really killed in the Youtini Fantasy League this week. I'll talk about. But before we get to that, Emma, this was your topics. Any last thoughts you want to have on the future of medicine in Star Wars, because it ain't going anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, I really hope that we see more medicine and like Corey said, biotech in Star Wars. I think that it really provides interesting paths to character development, really. I mean, for better or for worse, you know, Vader's suit makes him more angry and it looks menacing. That was kind of part of the plan. And bloodburn makes pilots, you know, envious. They want to go out into space, but they can't. And, you know, Bacta helps people heal. Like, I think that really medicine in Star Wars, or sicknesses or viruses or whatever it may be, is really just a good tool to do character development in a sort of a not really a traditional way.
Yeah.
And I hope we see more of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And even more so than medicine too, like getting cool stuff in regards to this, like science and biology is also super interesting. Like there's a lot of scientists in books, I feel like scientists that are good. Like the hero has to go and find this expert in this one field because they know all about this thing. Like that's a recurring theme in a lot of books. So like there's a lot of cool real world application, I think, in Star Wars. I love to see more of that stuff. It certainly makes for interesting discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, keep in mind this is science fiction, right? And medicine is some of the most advanced science or applications of that science that we have. So we're always going to see it, keep popping up in Star Wars. There's a lot of stuff that we didn't even cover necessarily today that we could even get into, even just off the top of my head too. So there's a ton of material here. But I have to say this before we roll out. What I want more than anything out of Star Wars and medicine is a new Star Wars TV show entitled Rey's Anatomy.
I'm sure the Reylo community would love a show called Rey's Anatomy.
Yeah, right.
Not like that, but like,
I would like to.
There's probably
study all of Rey's anatomy.
There's probably a fan fiction somewhere already called that. I'm gonna Google that right now to see what happens.
Corey, make sure you're be an incognito browser when you do that.
Yeah.
Wes, a question for you before we wrap it up. As another fellow non-medicine person to another, I feel like we learned a ton just by being in this conversation. What do you think going forward, man?
I have a question, more than a statement.
Okay.
So
Yes.
all of these like medical issues or diseases, they affected a lot of people, but Vader's suit is just for one person, one Jedi. Is there any instance of a suit like that for anybody else in Star Wars? Or is it only Vader because he's the only one that's worthy enough to wear it?
I mean, the only comparable thing I can think of right now, and I don't even think that this comes even close, but Finn's back to suit.
Oh yeah.
Oh
It's just
yeah,
a suit. It's a
right.
suit,
Yeah,
but
example in the
yeah.
sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
Who's that dude that Vader beats the shit out of in the comic? And there's a crossover with the Aphra comic. And
Oh yeah.
what's that guy's name? He's like a
Oh, the cybernetic guy, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember.
He's got a suit kind of like that.
What about the guy
Definitely.
from the Techno Union that keeps like
Oh yeah.
Oh, Watambor?
Oh my God, guys! John Dutch Vander just made us, and Bro Dameron in the chat just made us all feel like idiots.
Oh my God.
Grievous!
holy shit.
Oh my god.
Oh wow.
Grievous!
General
Who's
Grievous.
that?
Oh my God!
General Grievous. Yeah. Wow.
Oh,
God.
yeah, totally. Holy crap.
Clearly, there's so much more to get into. I just want to say I am very excited to see what medicine looks like in the High Republic, because this is
Yeah.
going to
Oh,
be 200 years before the current day. So naturally, you would think medicine must have evolved somewhat.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what we get there. So, and we're thinking about Carbon is the name. Cyber Akbar in the comics. Bro Dameron again. Thank you very much. So, yeah, guys, we got to do another one of these at some point. We absolutely will, I'm sure. I'm absolutely fascinated to hear more about it. But I wanted to give us a couple other things to talk about before we get on out of here on this lovely Monday. Thank you again to everyone that's in the chat right now for hanging out with us. This is the highlight of our week every single week, and this week is absolutely no different. Wes, I want to throw it to you. Tell the good folks at home what we got coming up on the good old Youtini game night.
So, Youtini Game Night saw the relaunch of Jedi Fallen Order. I started from the beginning last week, and I will be playing again this coming Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I am on what Charles calls the Maze of Zepho at this point because this
Hate that
damn
place.
level takes forever, and I keep forgetting where I'm at, and I'm just on the regular difficulty level and I keep dying. So it's nothing new. So if anybody's seen any of my streams, nothing new for me dying. So if you see the same level over and 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 over again, just go with the flow. Have a drink.
Don't pitch it too hard there, Wes.
Have a drink.
Yes, you're right. You heard it here, folks. Wes is on the Geonosis of Jedi Fallen Order. It's an old school shout out to game night. We also have Legends Look Back that is live every Thursday with Jared and Freddie, and Meg is producing that show right now, doing a bang-up job. Absolutely loving all their content. Our very own Conja Book Club is going every Saturday with Adam, who's in the chat right now, buddy. We got Timothy and Patrick are talking about Kenobi. There's some really lovely chats and comments this past week in that. And even if you can't always listen live, that channel is always really cool to see in Discord. And you guys really do some really lovely stuff up there. So make sure to catch up with them on the old podcast feed. December will be one of the Age of limited comic series for them. And January will be Light of the Jedi. That's right. We're making them do all the legwork before we do the roundtable so we can copy and paste. Youtini Fantasy Football Update. That's right, folks. The Youtini Fantasy League is still going very strong. I beat Charlie this week. And I'm going to say that a little quiet and just kind of move on from there. But it was a pretty big deal for me. Very happy about that. But our number one scorer this week was our very own Paul Matthews, friend of the show, P. Matty Ice. His team did very well, so shout out to you. And in the standings, though, James, what is your name in here? J. Carson 3, Jack Carsoni is leading the board, but we'll see what we can do. Emma, did you have a better week than last week in fantasy?
It depends on what happens tonight in Monday Night Football. I'm trying to take down number one right now, James. Coming for you, man. I think I'm in last place right now, and it hurts to say it.
Hey, I'm down there with you.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. We're having fun.
Everything's fine here. How are you? All right. Also on our Patreon, as we said, everyone, we got shows coming your way. Bounty Hunt will be up tomorrow. Wes and Corey and Charles and I talked about season 2, episode 2 of The Mandalorian, and is releasing every week. Later on this week, the Ghost Crew is going to be released by me and Charlie, I believe on Thursday or Friday this week. We're in season 2 of Rebels. Absolutely freaking love that show. And we have a special episode coming this week. I love the show. Nothing special on that podcast. And Cat Faves, the show with Meg and Heather, is continuing. It premiered on the 30th. It was so freaking fun. The Patreon feed just has all the content you could possibly wish for. And coming up, everyone, is Corey's reading of I, Jedi. That's right. We hit that Patreon goal. We're still working out the details. Stay tuned to vote for which part that he has to read. Corey, are you excited about that?
No.
Great. All right, everyone. But on that lovely note, my friends, that is going to do it for this week's episode of The Living Force.